Okay. Our next presenter is Angelina Benson-Glanz of Elevate. Angelina is the Director of Special Projects at Elevate, a nonprofit organization that designs and implements programs that reduce costs, protect people and the environment, and ensure the benefits of clean and efficient energy use reach those who need them most. In this role, she leads Elevate's role in the design, development, and implementation of the Justice40 Accelerator for community organizations working at the front lines of climate and environmental crisis. She oversees business development in California, as well as engagements directly with affordable housing developers to integrate energy and water efficiency to new construction, rehabs, and ongoing operations. Hi, Angelina. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So let me share my screen. Hopefully you will be able to see that.
It's perfect.
And let me also get my notes up. Wonderful. Okay. Well, again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. And I will kind of move a little bit fast so I can get through my material and save a little time for Q&A. But I am trying to simultaneously monitor the chat and will do my best to answer questions as well. So, but again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm Angelina with Elevate, and today I'm going to be sharing several case studies of existing buildings that we're working to electrify and really touching on what are the impacts to the residents of those buildings. So at Elevate, we believe that equity must be at the center of every climate conversation because everyone should have clean, affordable heat and power in their homes and communities, no matter who they are or where they live. As a nonprofit, we work collaboratively with communities, governments, housing providers, diverse contractors, and other nonprofit partners across the country to transition to just and clean and equitable clean energy solutions. Our programs span energy and health retrofits, solar and storage, smart grid, contractor development, workforce development, and community engagement. And over the past 20 years, we've retrofit over 100,000 units of affordable housing. We truly believe that the people and the communities who are most impacted by climate change are the same ones that have been historically marginalized and must be at the center of the solutions that we're designing and implementing. So with that, the problem that we're of course all here to talk about today is the elimination of fossil fuels in our buildings and communities in order to combat the climate crisis. This is particularly important in the Midwest, where Elevate is headquartered and has a large presence, and the majority of buildings rely on natural gas for heating in the cold winters. And so as we're really thinking about how to electrify and decarbonize our existing buildings, we also have to keep in mind that the residents with lower incomes, renters, seniors, and other vulnerable groups are more likely to live in older buildings, lack cooling, disproportionately be impacted by climate change and its effects. And then they're also often left behind in the solutions that are being designed and implemented. So as an organization, we're extremely focused on decarbonizing affordable housing, but making sure that we're doing it in a way that does not increase the energy burden and increase energy poverty, quite frankly. Sorry, I'm gonna use my... So to do this, we developed our building electrification program about 2 years ago. And this program provides a service delivery model for affordable housing owners to implement electrification upgrades with grant support and leveraging any available utility or public funding. And the program, again, is really designed to replace the fossil fuel using equipment with cleaner technologies, create a healthier living environment, add cooling to increase resident comfort, and generate savings. And so far, we've actually been able to upgrade 100 units, and we have about 500 more in the pipeline. So really, again, this program is really about bringing together all the pieces for an affordable housing owner. So starting with our internal technical expertise at Elevate to complete the feasibility analysis and assessments of the building, we then bring in engineers for the design of the systems and the equipment manufacturers and distributors and contractors to source and install the equipment, and then a wide variety of funders and funding mechanisms to cover the cost. And I just saw a question in the chat, affordable housing. Affordable housing, by that I mean both subsidized, so Section 8 low-income housing tax credits, as well as we also work in a lot of unsubsidized affordable housing. So it's inherently affordable because of the market rates, and or the owners are actually keeping the rates lower, the rents lower. So just wanted to touch on that question. And we do, real quick, just to answer this other question, sorry. We do actually work closely with Emerald Cities and their contractor development programs, and which do have a focus on high road contractors. So I would say not everywhere, but in a lot of the areas we do work. So just real. So of course, before I dive into the case studies, I just want to again present this visual of how we really think about the process of decarbonizing buildings, first focusing on efficiency of the building systems and the building envelope, and then moving towards electrification, adding renewables, and exploring opportunities to transition to dynamic rates, whether that be time of use or other rate structures that are offered by the utility. So with that, I'm going to delve into our first case study, which is in Chicago. It's a 3-bedroom property with 44 units, and it was built in the 1920s, which is pretty characteristic of the multifamily stock in Chicago. And this property has in-unit furnaces, central domestic hot water heaters. It primarily serves Latinx families. 70% of those families, 70% of the units are affordable to families at 50% of area median income, and the remaining 30% of the units are affordable to families earning 30% of the area median income. And it's important to note that about half of the residents actually did report utilizing utility bill assistance programs like low-income home energy assistance programs like HEAP. So I think another key piece of this particular property is that the owner is Bickerdike Redevelopment Corp, and they are a nonprofit who is heavily invested in their properties. They hold their properties for the long term, and they're very focused on providing high quality housing for their residents and making efficiency and electrification upgrades. And so all of these factors are really important because multifamily electrification, especially in the Midwest, is truly in its infancy. So this was the first building that we selected to go through the program, and it was for these reasons. So, and of course, going back to our framework of efficiency first, we selected this property because the roof cavity was air sealed and insulated back in 2013 through our efficiency program. And as you can see on the chart on the right-hand side of the slide, these buildings have an energy use intensity within the ballpark of the national median, which is pretty good given their age and the cold climate they're in. And then also we selected this property because it has the existing furnaces, and so that existing ductwork enabled us to add ducted air source heat pumps, taking advantage of that existing distribution system rather than having to redesign or add ductwork. And of course, cooling. These residents were relying on old, inefficient window units, and so this was really a nice opportunity to provide cooling. So just to give you a sense of the full electrification scope, as I mentioned, we installed ducted cold climate air source heat pumps, and only 10 of the units actually required backup electric resistance heat based on our models. So this actually did add cooling for the residents, which was wonderful. We replaced the central gas water heaters with several heat pump water heaters designed in parallel. We replaced the in-unit gas stoves with electric stoves, which helped improve the indoor air quality for residents. We replaced the common area dryers with electric resistance dryers. And, in this process, based on our analysis, we found that 4 units could potentially see an increase in cost, and also the owner would see an increase in cost. And so to minimize this cost increase, we actually included a 70 kW solar PV array in the process and in the design. And just a quick note on electric service upgrades, because I feel like that's always a topic that folks want to know more, is that most of the units actually did not require a panel upgrade. The units that had to have the backup electric resistance heat did need a panel upgrade, and the owner's panel also required an upgrade to accommodate the dryers and the heat pumps. And the stoves were not induction. It was a bit of I think a cost question, as well as just really trying to focus on getting the heat pumps for space heating and cooling, as well as the water heaters in there. So that was the only thing. It was just the typical kind of ceramic, non-induction electric resistant stoves. And this, just to touch on the cost of this, the cost of this was coming from a variety of sources, some of it grant funding, some of it utilizing local programs that are, government programs, things like that. So, yeah, so let me just jump to the next slide, show you some pictures. We all love some pictures. So here's the one of the outdoor units, and then the heat pump water heaters. So just to touch on the utility bill analysis, overall residents were anticipated to save 21%. And I will note that costs were expected to be a little bit higher in January, just due to the price of electricity and heating. Again, we installed the solar to offset any increases in costs in the 4 units that we had projected to see an increase, and of course the owner. So after the solar, we really are looking at savings for all parties in the property, which is really important. We did not actually replace any windows and doors in this property. We had previously focused on the attic air sealing and insulation.
If you're looking for questions, Jim.
Yeah, I see. I'm sorry. I was caught by the one. Did the residents pay for the stoves? The residents did not pay for the stoves. The stoves were actually included in the total project costs that was paid by the owner and grants and other means. So, yeah. Let's see. And this is just a little bit on the carbon impacts. So I just wanted to touch on real quickly, like what really made this project special, in my opinion. And that's really the level of resident engagement. It was so incredibly critical. And, I would say from the start, we really understood that there were going to be cultural sensitivities around construction, engagement, switching from gas to electric stoves, all of a sudden having a thermostat that they really have to control in a different way, heat pumps. So all of that was really baked into the process in terms of having property-wide meetings, really engaging the on-site tenant coordinator, door knocking, flyers, really being able to touch every tenant in some way. And of course, making sure that all of the information was bilingual. So I think that's a key piece of it. And then we have started to interview residents after the upgrades have been made in their units. And I would say all in all, like any hesitancy about the switch from gas to electric stoves was really offset by the excitement around having cooling. And Chicago has a history of heat waves that have resulted in the deaths of residents of low-income communities. And so this was particularly important and a huge quality of life boost for these residents. The other thing that I wanted to touch on here is that many of the residents were on LIHEAP, and LIHEAP has some unique aspects to it, that it's based on the heating system fuel type. So as residents were switching from gas to electric, it was resulting in some inability to actually access some benefits. So in this case, we were actually able to provide grant funding to help cover those costs, but we recognize that is not scalable or replicable for every project. And so it really does kind of touch on, there's an opportunity to address how residents whose homes are being electrified actually do access their light heat benefits going forward. So just wanted to touch on that. And I think that's what really made this property in this project special, was the deep resident engagement, which is so critical. In addition to that deep resident engagement, we actually are doing pre and post upgrade monitoring of a handful of the units, just to be able to understand what the impact on indoor air quality is, and also what, just kind of drill down a little bit more into the end use and the electric use at the end use of each of the equipment. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on this case study. It's a case study that my colleagues have written up for ACEEE, for the ACEEE summer study back in August. And I've included the link at the bottom of the screen if you want to delve even deeper into it, because I think it's a really good one just to delve deeper into. So keeping in mind the time, did the rents go up for the residents post retrofit? They did not, to my knowledge, but I will go back and ask to confirm. But this was something that was really important. We're really trying not to, see any additional burdens be placed on residents. So yeah, with that, I'm going to just transition to our next case study. I know there's a few more questions in the chat, but some of those I might just be able to touch on at the end because they're more kind of overall questions. So the next case study that I wanted to share with you is actually a project in the Madison area of Wisconsin that we're in the process of designing. And this property is built in 1982, has 4 buildings. 3 of those buildings are actually apartments and one are townhomes. It's project-based Section 8. And so the rents are affordable to residents at less than 50% of area median income. It's also important to note that residents pay for both electricity and gas in this property. And so from an efficiency first framework, we took a look at the energy use intensity of the 4 buildings on the property and really identified that the townhome was the most efficient, and that's where we wanted to start. And so this picture at the bottom of the page is of those townhomes. So in terms of electrification scope, again, these townhomes have furnaces, so it's a perfect opportunity to install ducted cold climate air source heat pumps. They also have individual hot water heaters, and so we will be installing heat pump water heaters, and then also installing smart thermostats. And I must say, I am not sure about the stoves in this property. I think they actually are electric already, but I can follow up if anybody really wants to delve deeper into that. But as we start to look at the potential impacts of electrification across the units in these townhomes, we really found that the electric use was going to increase pretty significantly, and it was actually not going to be offset by the gas bill. So in fact, residents would experience an average of $800 increase in their energy costs over the year. Given that our focus on residents and equity, that was not acceptable to us. So we really set out to determine what's the best strategy to offset this increase in cost. So obviously the natural thought is solar, obviously, but when you look at this property, here's the 1, 2, 3, 4. This 4th building is the townhomes. It's pretty shaded. And so what we came up with was actually installing carport solar in these open, unshaded areas of the parking lot. So this is the first time that we're really looking at a carport solar array on a property in the Midwest. So here's a bit more about the solar design that we're developing and planning to move forward with. So it's about 43 kW in terms of system size, and this will fully cover the increase in electricity usage across the 6 townhomes. And so just wanted to share that because this owner is a nonprofit and very, very concerned about their residents, we're actually going to be installing a common meter, electric meter for the solar to tie into. And also we're going to be tying in the residents' air source heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. So in actuality, the residents will only be paying for their plug load. And this will enable the owner to absorb any kind of month-to-month variations in electricity use and cost, as well as solar production. So it's kind of a innovative approach, shall we say, to make sure that the residents aren't going to experience significantly higher bills. And then the owner was very interested in actually adding battery storage to this property to actually keep these units online in the event of an outage. And this is really a pilot for this owner and something they're considering doing more broadly across their portfolio. So just for the last case study, and it's a very short one, just a different perspective. You know, at Elevate, we work across the Midwest and the West Coast, and the Pacific Northwest is a very different region and actually has a lot of all electric buildings already. So this is a case study less about fuel switching and more about just an interesting strategy that we used when installing the heat pumps. This property is 50 units, townhome style. It actually underwent a rehab a couple years ago where they made the efficiency improvements around attic insulation, wall insulation, window and door replacement, LEDs, low flow water fixtures, energy recovery ventilation in unit, and then of course the heat pump water heaters. And I think it's important to note that the owner wanted to keep the electric resistance space heating. And so I think that's, you know, a little bit of a challenge or barrier that we are experiencing in the Pacific Northwest. But just to touch on the heat pump water heaters, we actually installed them outside of the thermal envelope in a closet off the patio. And the water heater exhaust was ducted through the roof. There was a louvered door on the closet to provide the outdoor air. And really and truly, this installation strategy separated out any interactive effects between the domestic hot water and the HVAC system. So it was just kind of a unique strategy because that's something that we often worry about when installing heat pump water heaters in units, is them pulling conditioned air. This is particularly challenging in the winter. So this approach actually is saving residents about $250 a month or a year. So with that, I just, again, wanted to wrap up and touch on some of our learnings. And these are really that, you know, owners need support to figure out the best solutions. And that's what we strive to do through our programs. I would also say that owners that we work with are very focused on their tenants and also operating cost. But we have found that adding cooling and resiliency and the health benefits of electrification are definitely of interest to owners and especially to residents. I would also say the regional differences for us between like the Midwest and Pacific Northwest are very real in terms of the economics, technology solutions, contractor knowledge, and availability. And then, you know, really doing this electrification in affordable housing requires braiding of funds, especially making sure you get the efficiency done first, and then moving into the electrification and the renewables. And, you know, the policy gaps are just incredibly real, and there's opportunities. I know that with the Inflation Reduction Act, there's more funding coming, but the focus on finding funding for service upgrades, as well as addressing the LIHEAP benefit issue that I mentioned earlier, those are things that need to be addressed. The utility rate structures, there's also in a lot of areas an opportunity for that, because to make sure that electric heated rates are actually re-examined and don't cause, you know, don't limit the reasons as to why people are not making the switch. And then, of course, investments in the diverse workforce and contractors is just incredibly important to make sure that nobody's left behind. So while this is complex, it can be done, and it can be done right. And so hopefully these case studies provide just a few examples of how we've strived to do that. But there's so much more that we're learning each and every day with each project. So with that, that's all that I have. I will share my contact information also in the chat. I have 2 minutes and there's 21 messages in the chat. So I don't know, Sean, maybe you can help me out with what are the
applaud you. Yay! I think that, and there's some people want you to post things. That's the good, those are in there. Okay, so Ann Harvey asked, are the parking lot solar arrays using the space over the apartment buildings parking lots? What about the possible future weatherization and decarbonization of the apartments? And a number of people are like, are you doing the insulation? Are you doing the weatherization first?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think we're utilizing the space on the property that is currently available, but it does beg the question of like, what happens when we start to address the other 3 buildings on the property? So unfortunately, I don't have a good answer. I will say the other 3 properties are other 3 buildings on the property are less shaded. So I think we can explore the rooftop solar there. But I mean, these are the real things we're grappling with.
Well, and that Ian Tran was asking, if your company's encountered really tricky ones, like Ian is asking, what is the most challenging case in that line of inquiry? Like, this seems to be challenging. Do you have anything more?
I think what we're finding is that we really have to dig into each property and figure out the solution for that property. And so with each solution, we're encountering challenges like supply chain, very much a challenge. Finding contractors that are comfortable doing heat pumps, installing heat pumps is really a challenge that we're finding. And so as an organization, we're also trying to invest in the workforce and contractor development side of things. But there are also, getting the utilities involved in some cases is easier. So there are challenges with every kind of turn of this process, but they can be overcome. I want to deliver that optimistic message. We can do this. We can do this together.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much. So I think you should jump into the chat and then we'll sort of get back on schedule here. So great job. Yay.